We talking some Birds, the OTAs. We get some thoughts on some of the OTA matchups with Andrew DiCecco today from the Inside the Birds podcast. He was an observer at OTAs the last 2 days. We'll see what stood out to him here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. And if you're watching the live show on the X platform, formerly Twitter, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show, you can always watch there, and make sure you subscribe to get Football at 4 each and every day right here on the Sports Bash. So many different stories happening at the OTAs. We've got, obviously, Kevin Petula meeting the media for the first time yesterday. We'll get Andrew's take on how does he think things might change or be different with Kevin Petula in the fold now. We heard some comments we played a little while ago from LaShawn McCoy basically saying, look, this is Jalen Hurts' offense. It doesn't matter who the play caller is. We'll see if Andrew's buying that as well. What about in the secondary? Drew Mukuba, I guess he wants to go by. How did that look there against Sidney Brown? What the corner spot might shape up to start at OTAs, where you've got Adoree Jackson, Kaylee Ringo, and what about the role for Cooper DeJean this year? That is something that is going to be discussed as well as we look forward to all of the big matchups at Eagles training camp, which, by the way, is almost here. We're in the month of June already, everybody, right? We're in the month of June. I love it. As much as we wait for the summer to get here, it's summer's here, Memorial Day weekend, OTAs. Hey, can I get to football season? Give me the July practices. Give me the battles, because this team has a lot of them, and they had their first media open OTAs. It took place in the bubble. The Birds on display, and they had a bunch of things happening. 80 minutes they were out on the practice field with new offensive coordinator Kevin Petula speaking before practice. It was the first glimpse of the 2025 Eagles, the world champion team. The book is now closed. It is now time for the next version of the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's get into it now with Andrew DiCecco from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, here on the Sports Bash. What's going on, my man? How are you?
Mike, I'm doing great. Good to be with you.
As always, man, everybody looking forward to your reports on OTAs. You had a first-hand view of what's going on there. 80 minutes, the Eagles out there at practice. Here, 80 minutes, they had to get something accomplished, right? So give me a couple of things that you thought they got accomplished in the first 2 days of OTAs.
Well, they unveiled Kevin Petula, the new offensive coordinator, and I thought he did a really good job, at least in my estimation, for that initial presser. And what I was really able to glean is that he's going to optimize the talent that he has and put his players in the best position to be successful, which is really what you want to hear, and not somebody that's going to kind of try and reinvent the wheel. You obviously want to cater to those strengths. He also mentioned that a mentor for him was Chan Gailey in addition to Nick Sirianni. But all in all, I thought that was a really good opening presser for Kevin Petula. And then there were some takeaways for OTAs during the actual practice sessions. And I always say you never want to read too much into it. It's OTAs. There's a lot of mixing and matching that goes on. Teams or coaches are trying to really gauge where their personnel is best. And Cooper DeJean, and when the Eagles were in base, and it was, sparingly, but he was outside when he kicked back into nickel in those situations. And I think that's going to be his primary role. But I thought that was notable. I thought the fact that Will Shipley was really involved in the passing game and caught a lot of passes and got upfield and showed a lot of burst. And to me, he looked a little bit bigger. It looked like he added some muscle to his frame this year, which is obviously going to be critical, as I believe he is going to be the RB2 this year behind Saquon Barkley. Despite the addition of A.J. Dillon, I really do think that they like what they have there in Shipley. So those are two guys that I thought really stood out to me in particular, Kevin Petula and Will Shipley. And then on the defensive side, it was Andre Sam, the second-year safety from LSU, who I mentioned on your program. I mentioned it in a lot of places. And, he played at the highest level at LSU. He was pretty much a little brother to C.J. Gardner-Johnson last year. He spent the whole year on the practice squad. And I thought he was around the football a lot. He had a really nice breakup along the far sideline on a pass to Grant Calcaterra. So I thought he helped himself a little bit too.
Okay, a couple things off of what you just said. Cooper outside. Do you think there's a possibility that Mitchell and Cooper are the two outside guys in kind of a base form, and then Cooper gets slid to the inside when they go to, more of a nickel look?
Yeah, I do. And if your two best corners are Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, however you want to rank them, they are your two best corners. And I think it's only a matter of time, whether it's this year or down the line, where Cooper DeJean is an outside corner. But I'm not trying to minimize that nickel role because it is obviously critical in today's NFL. It's a starting role. But, yes, I think that you will see him kick inside the nickel when they are in those situations. And supporting that is that the Eagles really don't have anybody behind him that you can say, yeah, they have so-and-so waiting in the wings. They tried Sidney Brown there a couple of years ago. That didn't work out. Drew Makuba can play, can move around the formations, but he's not going to be an every down nickel. And, Perry Nickerson's there. Eli Ricks is not a nickel, so you can see where I'm going with this. They have someone in Cooper DeJean who's already one of the premier players at that position.
All right, you mentioned Kevin Patullo. We heard from him yesterday. You mentioned Chan Galley. I thought that name stood out to me as well, but it sounded like he took a little something from everybody. He mentioned Kellamore. He mentioned Frank Reich. He mentioned Chan Galley as all different coordinators that he worked under. The one question I would have for you is, he is a guy who has a pass game background, passing game coordinator the last 2 years here, wide receiver coach. Any indication that they might throw the ball more with him at the commands?
Not off of just one practice, but if I had to guess about how it's going to look, and you hear different players like A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts and everyone that has had the opportunity to be available speak on the evolution of the offense, yeah, I mean, when you read into it, the evolution certainly wouldn't be in the running game. I think it would be in the passing game, and I think you're going to see a little bit more creativity there. You have to remember, for the last year or so, you haven't really seen the explosive plays in terms of the passing game with regularity, the deep shots that were so prevalent in 2022 even. And there was a lot of horizontal pass plays yesterday for what it's worth, but you also have to bear in mind that during team drills, Johnny Wilson wasn't out there, Devontae Smith was not present for yesterday's session, and A.J. Brown was held out of team drills, probably just due to preservation. He was present, went through individual stuff. So you're not working with the full gamut of pass receivers, and it's more of the installation period anyway, so I don't know that you can read into it one way or the other. But to answer your question, yes, I do think you're going to see a little bit more of a dynamic pass attack this year with Kevin Patullo at the helm.
Okay, you mentioned Andre Sam. Let's throw one back at you on him. Talking to Andrew DiCecco, Football 4, is he in play in your mind with Drew Makuba, with Sidney Brown, and others for that safety spot?
Well, not as a starter, Mike, but that's safety 4 spot, right? Because I look at it at Reed Blankenship, Drew Makuba, and Sidney Brown. Now, that 4th spot, you're looking at a Tristan McCollum, an Andre Sam, a Lewis Seen, or a Maxon Hook, who is an undrafted free agent who's really good friends with Quinyon Mitchell and has gotten I've gotten a lot of questions about him and Lewis Seen to that degree. But the player no one is talking enough about is Andre Sam. I've written about him, and I've mentioned him various places, and then you see him go out there on the field, and you see a second-year player who's versed in the defense, who knows exactly what his coaches are asking him to do. He's playing with more confidence. He's faster. He's playing faster, and he's letting his instincts take over, and he was around the football a lot. Again, you never want to make too much out of it, but I thought that he looked, of that group, a player that I thought made the most of his reps. And so I'm looking to see how that will carry over next week, mandatory minicamp on June 10th, and then, of course, training camp when the pads come on. Because he did have a solid summer last year, really after the second half, for the second half of training camp.
All right. What is your take on Bryce Huff not being there? I know you wrote about him not there, Smith not there, Avery Williams not there, Ben Van Sumeren, Reed Blank. So other guys weren't there, but he certainly had a disappointing year, and you would think, hey, I know I had a bad year, but I want to prove that I can earn my $51 million, and he doesn't show. Big deal, not a big deal.
Yeah, it definitely raised my eyebrows because it was coming on the heels of the, being inactive for the Super Bowl. He had an underwhelming, to say the least, season last year, and this was an opportunity for him to get off on the right foot, prove to your coaches I'm willing to be present and put the work in and do whatever it takes to really turn the corner or really showcase what you've been working on in the offseason. But there's another side to that coin, and one, we don't know if there are other. Well, we don't know why he wasn't there, but we also don't know if it was his decision entirely or if it was a group decision with him and the Eagles. Maybe stay away. We're going to try and work something out, and we don't want to risk you getting injured. There could be a multitude of reasons here, but I thought for him not to be there was one that was the only player that I really had and highlighted and wanted to kind of look into that a little bit more because I was curious given the way that his season went last year.
All right, if I was to ask Andrew DiCecco, you mentioned in your notes over at InsideTheBirds.com that Tyler Steen, now it's hard to really, 7-on-7s and offensive line's hard at OTAs, but Tyler Steen versus Kenyon Green, if the Eagles secretly said, I want this guy to win that one, who do they want to win?
They would want Tyler Steen to win. If that is the question that's being asked, then they drafted him in the third round. They've now spent 2 full seasons developing him. He was the front runner to start last year, and obviously Mekhi Becton seized the opportunity when Steen missed time with the ankle, and kudos to him for doing that. But Tyler Steen would be a good story of development. I think that he did a really nice job last year when pressed into service. A lot of the times were mid-game, which is very challenging, and it looked to me like he was a player who saw the game. He had to see the game through a different lens last year. He didn't win the starting spot, and he was a rotational piece. But I thought that if he proved being able to step in those situations, which were really tough, that he was maximizing his practice reps, that he was really being a student in the film room because he was prepared. And I thought he did a really good job. And I'm looking to see if he's able to build on that and move. And, this season, he's going to be the front runner to win that job. But I think Kenyon Green might have something to say about that. But I think Steen is good enough to stave him off and will be the right guard.
Yeah, you said they drafted Steen in the third round. The Texans drafted Green in the first round. So last year,
he's an outside addition, and they've sort of Steen is more or less a homegrown player who they've developed. So I think that I would be more inclined to think that the Eagles would want him to win the job, and he'll probably be afforded every opportunity to do so.
We'll see. This happened last year to him. Mekhi Becton, he got usurped there by an outside guy who was a first-round pick. Very similar situation. That's definitely one to keep an eye on. Andrew, another one to keep an eye on, which you got to see firsthand, Adoree Jackson, Kaylee Ringo. Most people think, okay, they want Ringo to win that job, but the outside guy, Jackson, he seemed to be the guy that got the reps yesterday.
Yeah, not overly surprising, although Ringo has been here now for 2 seasons. But Adoree Jackson being the veteran, maybe they're showing deference there. Brett Toth, for example, was the first-team center with Cam Jurgens not there. They had Drew Kendall, who obviously will be the number 2 and have more opportunities in training camp. But sometimes in the initial practice, and we also don't know what the lineups look like in the other days that the media is not there. But I thought that Adoree Jackson got more of the first-team reps than Ringo worked in as well, but it was heavily featured Adoree Jackson with the ones. And that's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on because obviously he has the experience. He's much more of a consistent player, much more of a known commodity. And if he's able to be more fundamentally sound than maybe a Keely Ringo, who has more athleticism, in my opinion, well, that could be the determining factor whether or not Vic Fangio fully trusts the player.
All right, last one for Andrew. The quarterbacks yesterday, Tanner McKee seemed to get most of the reps there. You've got the other group of guys, DTR, and, of course, Kyle McCord. Was this an evident winner in the backup quarterback spot, even though it looks like McKee is going to be the guy? But when you put the 3 of them together, did anything stand out?
I thought McKee had a really good day. He threw a deep touchdown to undrafted free agent wide receiver Darius Cooper from Tarleton State. He threw another deep shot to Danny Gray. He had about a 20 to 25-yarder on the left side to tight end Harrison Bryant. He throws the ball with velocity. He has the size at 6'6" that he just delivers the football with the timing, the accuracy, and there's just such a drastic drop-off when you see Tanner McKee leave and you see DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, go in. And it almost seems like it takes a lot more effort for him to make those type of throws. He doesn't quite have the same arm, nor does he have the arm strength. And McKee is a player that I think the NFL is going to be intrigued with in the future. And the Eagles are going to have a hard time keeping him because the secret is out. Then you look at Kyle McCord, and I think eventually Kyle McCord, once you get through training camp, is going to leapfrog DTR. Obviously, the Eagles gave him the opportunity first because he's a proven commodity, and they're going to have McCord earn those opportunities. So I think that'll eventually settle itself in training camp.
All right, there's our Football at 4 for this Thursday edition. Andrew DiCecco from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. You can get all of his OTA observations over at InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, right here on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, we'll talk to you later, man.
Sounds good, Mike.
All right, there's Andrew DiCecco here for Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. So many nuggets there for you.